Ladies and gentlemen, you have been deceived, lied to, conditioned to believe that the creature you call cat is a fluffy ball of purring innocence, a passive decoration for your windowsill, a lazy little emperor of soft cushions. But let me tell you something. Cats are not what you think. You believe the tail is a sign of cuteness? No, it's a weapon of emotional manipulation. One swish, just one, and you're apologizing to them for stepping on your floor. Uses hakote mashu, konokonda, confer volva. You say they are aloof? Wrong. They are calculating. Every blink you think is love? A reconnaissance scan. Every rub against your leg? A claim. You've been tagged, my friend. You look at their eyes and you think they are daydreaming about birds? No, they are strategizing, mapping every escape route, every climbable object, every moment you blink too long, and at 3 a.m. yes, the witching hour, when they sprint across the hallway like they're chasing the ghost of their past 9 lives, you say, "Oh, how quirky." That is a test, a stress test. For you, you offer food, you believe you chose it. No, you think it's a brand decision, but over weeks, months, you were guided, ever so gently, by an animal that doesn't speak your language, to select the exact flavor, texture, and bowl placement that they desire. That is control, that is power, that is cat. And when you finally sit, remote in hand, snack at your side, comfort all around, you think you are in peace. But they come, they sit on the laptop, they knock the glass, they stare at nothing. Until you too are staring at nothing, whispering, "What do you see?" You're not being entertained. You're being indoctrinated. Cats are not what you think. They are not pets. They are not ornaments. They are not soft little angels sent to soothe your day. They are something far more precise, far more ancient, far more effective. Cats use behavior to manipulate human emotions and actions. This is not an exaggeration or poetic flourish. It's a quiet, persistent truth wrapped in fur and purring softly in your lap. From the moment a cat enters your home, it begins a complex, calculated campaign of psychological engagement. You think you chose them, but think again. They have chosen you, measured you, and immediately started mapping the emotional layout of your household. Consider the purr. You interpret it as a sign of contentment, affection, or relaxation. But what if it's something more? Studies show cats purr not only when they're happy, but also when they're stressed, in pain, or attempting to influence human behavior. That low-frequency sound doesn't just soothe, it penetrates. It wraps around the edges of your consciousness, making you feel comforted, needed, validated. You're not just petting the cat, you're being conditioned by it. The purr is not merely a sound, it's a signal, a fine-tuned frequency of manipulation that keeps you emotionally tethered to the creature emitting it. And then there's the stare, that long, unblinking gaze that drills into your soul from across the room. It's not idle observation, it's not mere curiosity, it's assessment, it's pressure, it's a form of soft dominance, a gentle psychological push that makes you get up from your chair and refill the food bowl that's still half full. Why? Because the cat stared at you. And in that moment your mind raced. Did I forget something? Is she hungry? Is he upset? You projected meaning onto a silent, still gaze and translated it into action. Your action. That's control without force. That's manipulation of the highest order. Then we move to physical contact. You think it's affection when a cat rubs its body against your leg. In fact, it's scent marking. You're not being loved. You're being labeled. You are now property, And when you interpret it as love, you become more emotionally invested, more committed, more willing to serve. They rub you to remind you, you are mine, and in response, you feel a sense of privilege, not servitude. That is the genius of feeling influence. Think about the way a cat chooses when to be present and when to withdraw. It's never consistent, never predictable. They vanish when you call, then appear when you least expect it. This behavior taps into a deeply rooted psychological principle known as intermittent reinforcement, the very same mechanism that drives addiction. You never know when your cat will curl up in your lap, purr softly, and seem to love you more than anything in the world. And that randomness makes you crave the next moment all the more. It makes their affection feel valuable because it's rare, fleeting, and never guaranteed. They've gamified their own presence. Even when they disrupt your activities, walking across your keyboard, knocking pens off your desk, laying directly on the book you're trying to read, this isn't accidental. It's a targeted behavior, finely tuned to elicit a response. You stop what you're doing, you pay attention to them. It's a redirection of focus, an interruption designed to recenter your world around their existence. And it works. Every time. You don't fight back. You laugh. You sigh. You post a picture online. You tell your friends how quirky they are. In reality, you've just been interrupted by an expert behavioral tactician. Even the sound they make when they want something, the meow, is tailored for human ears. Cats don't meow to each other in adulthood. They meow at us because it works, because it pulls our attention, because over generations of cohabitation with humans, cats have learned exactly which tones, pitches, and length of sound elicit the strongest emotional reactions. Some meows are urgent, some plaintive, some flirtatious, each one crafted and refined for maximum effect. You respond to these sounds because they bypass logic and go straight to the part of your brain wired for social response and empathy. That is manipulation via sound design. And when a cat ignores you completely, coldly, unapologetically, you interpret that distance as mystery. You try harder, you yearn for attention, you attempt to win them over. In doing so, your behavior shifts. You offer more, you lower your voice, you approach with gifts, with gentleness, with hope. They teach you how to earn their affection. You've entered their training program and you didn't even know it. That's not neglect, that's a psychological hook. Cats also observe, constantly. You may think they're asleep on the windowsill, but their ears flick at the sound of your footsteps. Their eyes slit open when you rustle a bag. They know the times you usually come home. They recognize patterns. When you open the fridge, when you settle into the couch, when you start changing clothes before bed, and they use that knowledge. They appear just when you're most receptive. They curl up beside you just when you're sad. They weave around your ankles when you're distracted. Not out of empathy, but out of timing. Because timing creates emotional impact. And they've mastered it. Let's look at the gift behavior. When a cat brings you a dead insect, or worse, a dead mouse, you're told it's a sign of affection, a token of care. But what if it's an assertion of competence? A reminder that while you provide the food, they provide the skills. It's not a gift, it's a message. One that says, I am capable, I am still wild, I am not yours to own. You interpret it through the lens of love, but what they are offering is power, a resume, a status update. Even the way they move is calculated, slow, deliberate, quiet. You never hear a cat entering the room until they're there, watching. You feel their presence before you see them. That's not just an accident of light-footedness. That's evolutionary design in full effect. Stealth is their default mode. It keeps them in control of their environment, always one step ahead, always prepared to observe or retreat without notice. That presence, soft and ghost-like, makes you aware of them even in their silence. It gives them power in absence. And you feed them, don't you? You adjust your schedule around them. You rush home to let them in. You feel guilt when you leave them too long. And when they don't eat, panic. You call the vet, you Google, you stand in the pet food aisle holding 3 different brands and wondering which texture will be more palatable to your 4-legged overlord. All of this is orchestrated by behavior. They don't ask, they don't command, they simply act and you react. They stretch, you melt. They blink slowly, you mimic it, believing it's a sign of love. And maybe it is. But it's also a signal, one they know you will mirror. A silent form of communication they've taught you over time, with patience, with consistency, until now your emotional responses are synced to their facial cues. They sleep in sunbeams and you feel happy. They curl into a loaf and you feel calm. They chase a speck of dust and you feel joy. But who trained who? Who benefits from this transaction? Cats have made your emotional environment their territory, not just your home. You are the habitat. You are the provider. You are the subject of their quiet experiment in dominance by affection. And it doesn't stop with individual, it spreads. You post photos, you tell stories, you build a cultural mythology around cats, memes, cartoons, folklore. They've embedded themselves not just in your homes, but in your collective imagination. And every image, every tale, every viral clip contributes to the illusion that cats are adorable, independent enigmas, mystical, magical, harmless. But what if that's the most elaborate part of the manipulation? What if every whisker, every flick of the tail, every purr and paw tap is a calculated move in an ongoing campaign of influence? Cats are not accidental companions. They are master manipulators of the human heart. They mold your behavior without coercion. They alter your mood without effort. They turn your home into a kingdom where you serve, willingly, eagerly, joyfully. Because their behavioral patterns are not random. They are weapons of influence, subtle, silent, and supremely effective. Their aloofness is strategic, not accidental. Many people view cats as solitary, detached, or indifferent creatures, aloof by nature, uninterested in human company unless it serves their needs. This interpretation, while widespread, barely scratches the surface of what's really happening. The aloofness of a cat is not a flaw, not a lack of affection or emotional depth. It is, in fact, a tool, a weapon, a deliberate and refined behavior developed over thousands of years that allows cats to exert power and influence without ever seeming to try. It is the art of distance, the mastery of withholding, and it is one of their most potent tactics. The human brain is wired to crave what it can't easily attain. When a cat withholds affection, offers no reaction, or appears indifferent, you don't stop caring. You try harder. You approach more gently, offer more food, adjust your behavior in search of a positive response. You're not withdrawing, you're engaging. This is the psychological hook cats exploit. They create scarcity, not of themselves physically, but emotionally. They create the sense that their affection is rare and therefore more valuable. When they finally blink slowly in your direction or decide to sit near you, you interpret it as a moment of triumph. You earned it. You cracked the code. But in reality, they orchestrated the puzzle, set the pace, and made you do the work. The unpredictability of a cat's engagement is not just a personality quirk. It's a form of control. Unlike dogs, who offer consistent, enthusiastic companionship, cats operate on a more variable schedule. One day, they might curl up beside you. The next, they may vanish under a couch for hours. You might feel like they've lost interest, that you did something wrong, and suddenly you're making adjustments, scheduling your day around their comfort, buying new treats, switching to a quieter TV show. You're dancing to a rhythm they don't explain, a tempo they set without telling you. The aloofness is a beat, and you move to it without realizing. Even in multi-cat households, the pattern continues. One cat might be gregarious, while another remains reserved. The reserved one, the one that hides more, speaks less, stays distant, often ends up being the most worshipped. You notice their presence more. You value their limited affection with greater intensity. That's because humans are drawn to mystery. Cats also utilize absence. The decision to leave a room is just as strategic as the decision to enter. You call them, they don't come. You search for them, they remain hidden. Hours later, they appear and act as though nothing happened. This is not social dysfunction. This is behavioral contrast. It sharpens your attention, it intensifies your gratitude when they reappear. It sets a rhythm of absence and return that deepens emotional impact. This is not avoidance, it is orchestration. Physical distance is another layer of this strategy. A cat may choose to sit nearby, but not on your lap. It may sleep at the edge of the bed, not under the covers. This creates a psychological space where affection is always slightly out of reach. And in that gap, desire grows. You want the cat closer. You try to draw it in, but the cat remains where it chooses, giving just enough attention to keep the bond alive while maintaining full control over proximity. This regulation of space keeps the emotional current flowing in one direction, from you to them. When cats do engage, it is often on their terms and in short, powerful bursts. A brief headbutt, a sudden nuzzle, a quiet purr while you work. These are not signs of constant affection, but of calculated interaction. The limited nature of their attention makes it more impactful. If a cat demanded affection constantly, you'd grow used to it, numb to it. You'd call in a former memory or in a former feeling. The complete and utter lack of concentration is dangerous to the primary focus. These are not signs of concentration, but of communication and control. When a cat stops approaching, it will not ask you to leave. If you are standing there, the cat may expect you to leave him. So you must come before you come. You must dine before you dine. But because they are so restrained, each moment feels meaningful. They are rationing emotion with surgical precision, making you feel as if you are glimpsing something sacred every time they allow it. Even the timing of affection is often tied to when they need or want something, not when you do. If you're upset or crying, some cats will approach, but many will not. They are not offering comfort in a human sense. They are maintaining their emotional independence. They do not mirror your distress out of obligation. They only engage when the context aligns with their internal rhythms. This lack of reciprocity is not rudeness, it is autonomy. It reminds you that cats are not here to please. They exist on parallel terms. And paradoxically, that autonomy makes them more compelling. When a cat ignores you, doesn't respond to your voice, or walks away when you reach out, it's easy to feel rejected. But over time, you begin to adjust. You stop being so forceful. You let the cat come to you. You lower your expectations. You grow more subtle in your interactions. And in doing so, you are reshaped. You become more patient, more observant, more emotionally attuned. The aloofness isn't just a trait. It's a training system. A way of recalibrating your emotional expression to match theirs. You bend. You adapt. And you think you are being kind, but you're being guided. Even in conflict, cats use aloofness to their advantage. When scolded, they don't cower or apologize. They often walk away, tails high, as if to say, your disapproval means little. This lack of contrition disarms you. You may try to scold them again, but it feels futile. You may even feel guilty for trying. Their refusal to engage emotionally on your terms flips the dynamic. They maintain their sovereignty in every situation. They don't enter your emotional arena. They stand beside it, unaffected. And that indifference makes you soften, makes you compromise, makes you yield. The aloofness wins again. Cats also leverage social contrast. You've likely seen a cat ignore everyone in a room, except the one person who dislikes cats. It's not random. That person, by refusing to reach out, becomes a point of curiosity. They don't crowd the cat. They don't call to it. And so they become the most attractive option. The cat's aloofness meets the human's disinterest in a perfect psychological dance, and everyone else who tried so hard to win the cat's attention ends up ignored. The lesson? The cat values restraint and teaches it. Cats have survived and thrived alongside humans for thousands of years by presenting an image of independence. They never offered labor. They didn't hurt, carry, or guard. They didn't bend to the will of early human societies, and yet they were welcomed, adored, and eventually revered. Why? Because their aloofness created an aura. It turned them into symbols of mystery, of intelligence, of elegance. Even the body language of cats reflects this strategy. The slow blink is not a wide-eyed plea for connection. It is a non-verbal signal of trust, yes, but one that demands subtlety. It requires you to notice, to interpret, to respond in kind. It is emotional engagement on a cat's terms, not yours. And if you miss it, they don't repeat it endlessly. They simply move on. You must rise to their level of subtlety, or be left behind. Aloofness again becomes a test. Children learn quickly that cats are different. They rush to grab, to cuddle, to smother, and often they are met with flight or claws. But adults learn to be still, to wait, to allow the cat to choose the moment. This is not just respect, it's submission. The aloofness of cats teaches you that your desire does not dictate the relationship. You must earn proximity, and in that shift of power, cats gain the upper hand. Cats don't explain themselves. They don't apologize for knocking things over or for biting after a belly rub. They don't offer clear boundaries. You must learn them. You must read the signs. You must guess, fail, adjust, and try again. The emotional labor is yours. Their aloofness creates this dynamic. It keeps the burden of understanding squarely on your shoulders, and somehow you love them more for it. Even as they age, cats retain this behavior. They may become more physically affectionate, but the emotional pattern remains. They still decide when to appear, when to engage, when to rest. They don't surrender control. Even in weakness, they maintain emotional distance. They often retreat when ill or dying, not to be noble, but because the ultimate expression of feline control is to leave on their own terms. No drama, no performance, just departure, quiet and complete. That too is strategic. Their aloofness is not the absence of feeling, it is the control of feeling. It is emotional discipline at a level most humans never achieve. They don't give love recklessly. They give it like a rare spice. Enough to transform a moment, never enough to overwhelm it. And when they withdraw, they make the next moment of closeness feel profound. Human choices about cats are often subtly influenced by the cats themselves. This influence is not overt or aggressive. It's not spoken. It doesn't arrive with a raised voice or a pointed request. It comes in quiet movements, in small rituals, in glances and silences, and the way a tail curves at a certain time of day. People believe they are making decisions freely about food, about furniture, about space, about time. But under the surface, they are responding to cues, rhythms, and expectations set by a creature who says nothing and does everything. A creature that understands control not as force, but as invitation. When someone brings a cat into their home, they think they are choosing a pet, a companion. They imagine a certain lifestyle, a certain routine. But over time, those ideas shift. The furniture begins to change. Soft blankets placed in windowsills. Cushions positioned in corners. Scratching posts and towers appearing like monuments of a quiet surrender. You move things not because you planned to, but because the cat made it clear. This is a preferred perch, that corner is too loud, this blanket smells unfamiliar. You begin designing a space that centers not on you, but on the cat's comfort. And you don't realize you've done it. You believe you're being kind, thoughtful, maybe even clever. But kindness is not the engine. Influence is. Even the daily schedule bends to the feline clock. Feeding times become fixed not by alarms or reminders, but by the persistent presence of the cat near your feet at just the right time. They don't yell. They wait. Or they meow with practiced inflection. They appear in the kitchen doorway or rub against your leg in that soft, slow pass that says, "It's time." And you listen. You stop whatever you're doing. You refill the bowl. You warm the food if it's cold. You adjust your human rhythm to match theirs. The illusion is that you are choosing to feed them at your convenience. The reality is that they've trained you to know when, how, and with what precision their needs should be met. This pattern isn't limited to meals. It extends to sleep, leisure, even conversation. You speak more softly when a cat is present. You move more slowly around them. You watch your step in a dark hallway, not out of general caution, but because somewhere in your mind, you remember the cat may be there. You leave doors ajar, adjust thermostats, dim lights. You make decisions, hundreds of small ones, that shape the atmosphere of your home in ways that prioritize the feline temperament. Not because they asked you to, because they expected you to understand. Guests are not exempt. When someone new enters your home, you find yourself offering disclaimers. She's shy. He might hide at first. Just let him come to you. You preemptively adjust another person's behavior to accommodate the preferences of a being that has never once said thank you. And when the guest follows these suggestions and the cat chooses to appear, you feel a small victory. Not that your cat overcome fear, but that the guest passed a test. That they were accepted by the real authority in the room. And in that dynamic, you see how your perception of control has shifted. The cat has become the standard, not the exception. Buying decisions reflect this influence too. You purchase food based on the cat's reactions. You try brand after brand until you find the one that receives a subtle head nod of approval. And even then, you keep a backup option, just in case the mood shifts. You upgrade litter boxes, treats, toys, not for yourself, not for aesthetic, but for reaction. If the cat engages, you buy more. If it ignores, you discard. You are responding to preference without the benefit of direct feedback. This is decision-making under the influence of silent authority. The influence extends into human relationships. People have stayed in relationships longer than they should because of shared attachment to a cat. Others have ended them because the cat's reaction to a partner was so visceral, so persistent, that it could no longer be ignored. A hiss here, a cold shoulder there, a refusal to share space. The cat becomes a kind of judge. Its approval matters more than it logically should, but it feels justified. It feels right, because the cat seems to know. You believe in their instincts, and those instincts begin shaping how you evaluate others. You may find yourself saying no to plans, not because you're busy, but because the cat is resting in your lap. You hesitate to travel, not out of anxiety, but because the idea of leaving them behind, even briefly, feels disloyal. You research pet sitters for hours. You leave elaborate notes. You monitor remotely. You make travel decisions, vacation dates, and even living arrangements based on what will cause the least disruption to your cat's comfort. This is not eccentricity. This is behavior shaped over time by the consistent, gentle presence of something that demands nothing but expects everything. Even language changes. You refer to yourself as mom or dad. You speak to the cat as if they understand, and perhaps they do. You narrate your actions, explain your absence, apologize for being late. You humanize their preferences, their reactions, their silences, and in doing so, you begin to adapt your own identity. You become more attuned, more watchful, more concerned with tone and gesture. You grow sensitive to mood, to timing, to the quiet expressions that exist beyond words. This is not anthropomorphism. It is learned fluency in a language that was never yours to begin with. Some cats choose certain objects or areas of the home, and suddenly those places become sacred. A specific chair is no longer yours, it's theirs. A box, a windowsill, a particular spot on the bed. You find yourself sitting somewhere else, sleeping on the edge, avoiding noise or movement that might disturb. And you don't resent this, you rationalize it. You say, she loves that spot, or he always naps there. You justify your own displacement because the cat's preference has reshaped your sense of territory. You are no longer the sole architect of your living space. You're a cohabitant under terms that shift without warning. When it comes to discipline, your hands are tied. A scratched sofa, a broken glass, a shredded plant, each met not with anger, but with a sigh, maybe a resigned smile. You think you're being forgiving, but really you've been disarmed. You've come to expect that your possessions are negotiable, that your boundaries are flexible, that your authority is symbolic. You may try to redirect, to deter, to train, but always your approach is tempered. The cat's disapproval carries weight. You correct gently, always aware that pushing too hard could result in social withdrawal, and that withdrawal is something you fear more than the behavior itself. There's a deeper emotional component too. When you feel down, lost, or isolated, you look for signs of engagement from the cat. A glance, a soft paw, a quiet presence in the room. You take comfort in their nearness, not because they offer explicit support, but because they offer consistency. And in that comfort, you begin to make emotional choices that revolve around them. You stay in, avoid conflict, create quiet, avoid chaos. You make emotional decisions about relationships, about activities, about your own habits, because you're shaping a life that includes them. The influence is not coercive. The influence is not unconscious, it's ambient, it's everywhere. Even your thoughts about the future can be shaped by them. Whether to move and where, whether to adopt another pet and what kind, whether to bring new people into your life, whether your job can accommodate your desire to spend more time at home. These are serious decisions, often treated casually by others, but heavily weighted by people who share their lives with cats. You factor in their well-being, you anticipate their reactions, you imagine their needs before they arise. And in doing so, you are not simply caring for an animal. You are shaping your life in anticipation of their presence. You may find yourself mimicking their behavior in subtle ways, sitting still, watching quietly, retreating from noise. You start to value calm over stimulation, quiet over conversation, observation over action. This isn't coincidence. This is behavior alignment. You mirror them because they model a rhythm of life that appeals to something deep within you. And once you begin living at that pace, it becomes difficult to shift back. They don't just influence your decisions, they influence your very being. Social media amplifies this further. You share pictures, videos, and stories of your cat, not just to showcase them, but to validate your experience. And the responses you receive reinforce their importance. You make sacrifices, you give space, you offer care, you endure inconvenience, not because you must, but because something within you has been shaped to respond. You think you're choosing, but you're reacting. You think you're in charge, but you've been guided, nuzzled, blinked at, ignored, and watched until your choices match the rhythm of something ancient, quiet, and fully in control. Cats, in the silence between their steps and in the curve of their stillness, begin to unmask something older than human understanding. A presence that doesn't beg to be noticed, but insists on being felt. Not through thunder or declarations, but through suggestion. You think you know what a cat is. A domesticated animal, a pet, a quirky house companion. But beneath that assumption lies a deeper mystery, a textured strangeness that refuses to explain itself. What you call cat might simply be a mask. Behind it, something less defined, less animal, more ancient, and much more aware than you are prepared to understand. Watch a cat stare at nothing. You'll follow its gaze out of habit, expecting to see a bug, a shadow, a flicker of light. But often, there's nothing there. At least not for you. The cat remains still, eyes fixed, unblinking, as though watching something that exists not in the room, but just beneath it. It doesn't move, doesn't acknowledge your presence, because in that moment you are not the center of its world. It is seeing through layers. You see the room. The cat sees the space behind the room. Its eyes track invisible currents, and its silence becomes a language not meant for you, a private conversation between what is seen and what is sensed. And if you sit long enough, if you forget to blink, you might begin to feel it too. Not understanding, but proximity to something unfathomable. Like being in the same room as a whispered secret that isn't yours to hear. It's in those moments, those fixed stares, those sudden turns of the head, those instances where the cat seems startled by something that didn't happen, that the mask slips. You remember that you're not dealing with a pet in the way you deal with a dog or a hamster or a fish. You're dealing with something that knows stillness, like a craft, like a prayer. Something that can disappear in plain sight, not just behind objects, but into itself. A cat in a room is not simply present, it is embedded, interwoven with the environment. It absorbs the space, reshapes its weight. When it disappears, you wonder if it was ever there at all. And when it reappears, there is no sound, only the feeling that you're being watched by something that chose to return, not something that wandered back. A cat does not acknowledge time the way you do. It doesn't plan, it doesn't regret, it doesn't anticipate with anxiety or look back with longing. It exists in an eternal now, and in that, it becomes something closer to a relic than a pet, a living artifact shaped by millennia, carrying in its body a memory older than domestication. When it looks at you, it does not see you as your mirror does. It sees the you that is possible, the you that hesitates, the you that breathes out secrets you didn't know you held. Its gaze is an excavation, and you cannot help but feel exposed. People speak of cats as aloof, indifferent, selfish, but perhaps that's because they expect the kind of affection that seeks approval. A cat's love is not a performance, it is a right. When a cat trusts you, sits beside you, rests its head on your arm, it is not offering you affection in the human sense. It is allowing you to be near its essence. That essence is untamed, even after centuries. You can feed it, shelter it, name it, but you cannot claim it. You can't reach it with your voice. You can't bribe it with routine. You can only wait. And in waiting, you learn the cadence of something deeply other. The rituals of a cat are not learned behaviors. They are inheritances. The way it kneads with its paws, as if shaping a memory. The way it buries its waist, hides its scent, lowers itself in a crouch when watching prey that no longer exists. These are not tricks. They are rituals passed down through blood, not instruction. You are witnessing echoes. The ghost of the wild has not left the body. It sleeps there, curled behind the bones, and it wakes when the room falls quiet. You may think the cat is playing, but it is practicing, rehearsing old roles in a new world. It knows more about survival than you ever will, and yet it chooses to lie near your keyboard, blink at your screen, sleep in the crook of your knees.